started. It is 7 p.m. on the East Coast, 6 p.m. here in Des Moines, Iowa, and we welcome you to the 7th Republican debate of the 2016 campaign. I'm Martha McCallum.
And good evening, I'm Bill Hemmer. We are live at the Iowa Event Center here in downtown Des Moines. In only 4 days, Iowa officially kicks off the race for the White House.
Tonight we are partnering with Google for an exclusive second screen experience. Search Fox News Debate on Google anytime tonight to access exclusive content. You can see the campaigns respond to the debate in real time, and you can weigh in by voting on the topics that's being discussed. Just go to google.com, open the Google search app, and type in Fox News Debate.
So tonight you're going to hear from the candidates, and 4 of them are on stage right now. Let's introduce them. Businesswoman, former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, Carly Fiorina.
Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee.
Also with us tonight, 2-time Senator from Pennsylvania, Rick Santorum.
And former Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore.
This debate, the first debate of the evening, will last 1 hour. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. If you run out of time, you will hear this. It never changes. So here we go. 97 hours before Iowa chooses. In fact, the last 2 winners in this state are on this stage tonight. Governor Huckabee, in 2008, you won by 9 points here. But this time, your support seems to be going to Senator Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Why, Governor, is your message not working this time?
I don't think it's that the message isn't working. I think it's the message isn't getting out. Because the message that I have this time, Bill, is exactly what I said 8 years ago. I talked about how people who are standing on their feet on factory floors, people who lift heavy things, who sweat through their clothes, they're getting gut punched. They are not having a fair shake in this economy. I talked about that 8 years ago, and I'm talking about it now. I talked about the importance of preserving life, of not just saying we're going to defund Planned Parenthood, but let's do something bolder. Let's get rid of abortion once and for all by applying the 5th and 14th Amendment to every person from conception, because that means that we recognize that no person can be deprived of life or liberty unless they have due process, and that's not happening in our country. And I believed and continued to practice that we need the fair tax to revive our economy, to make it so that people are able to be rewarded for their work rather than punished for it.
Governor, thank you. Senator Santorum, 4 short years ago, you won Iowa. You beat Mitt Romney. You pretty much shocked the country. But just the other day, you talked about doing what is in the greater good for your campaign. Is Monday night your last stand?
You know, listening to what your network was talking about prior to this race, this debate, reminded me of the coverage that many on this floor are getting. This debate was called the undercard debate. The undercard debate. It wasn't advertised significantly. In fact, the entire hour lead up to this, there was no conversation about any of the 4 people on this debate stage. And that is the chronic situation. In fact, they put a poll up from Wall Street Journal, NBC News, and they listed the candidates, and they failed to mention that I wasn't listed. I got 0. Why? Because the NBC Wall Street Journal poll never includes my name on the list. This is what the media has been doing over the past year in trying to segregate and take Iowans out of the process. What Iowans deserve is to hear from every candidate on an equal footing. Had they applied the same rules 4 years ago, I would have been in the undercard debate. The guy who won the Iowa caucuses would have been in the undercard debate, not talked about. We would have been talking about maybe an entertainer that may have been trying to run. Ladies and gentlemen, you have a chance on Monday to put the record straight about who you want, not who will entertain you,
okay,
but who will fight for what you believe
Senator,
in, and I hope you do it.
Do you want to name, Senator, do you want to name that entertainer you're referring to?
Well, look, the entire lead up to this debate was talking about whether Donald Trump is going to show up for the next debate. The people of Iowa, who I know pretty darn well, care a lot about the issues. They care about who's going to be the leader of the free world, who's going to be able to take on ISIS and take on Iran and make sure that we're safe. They're concerned about whether their agriculture programs to the renewable fuel standard is going to be maintained. And we're not hearing any of those things. We're hearing about whether someone's going to show up for the next debate or not.
Quickly then, after this debate, you mentioned Donald Trump's name. Immediately you're going to an event across town here in Des Moines as a guest of Donald Trump. So, are you laying the groundwork for maybe your future, perhaps an endorsement of Mr. Trump?
You know, this, again, more of the politics of trying to get people to throw stuff at each other. I'm not going to throw mud at anybody on this stage tonight. I'm not going to throw mud at anybody on the stage later. I'm not going to attack Donald Trump. What I'm going to say, Mike Huckabee and I were asked to come to an event where money was going to be raised to help our veterans. You know, I thought about it. I said, well, wait a minute. Now, if there were no political considerations, and I had some time because I'm not doing anything at 9 o'clock tonight.
Well.
And so if I had some time, would I go if I could help raise money for veterans? Well, and the answer was yes, I would, and so I'm going.
Well, Bill,
Thank you, Senator. One moment. We'll get to you in a moment, Governor. Right. We have a few coming up.
So it will come as no surprise that there's an idea out there that there's a civil war brewing within the GOP over the meaning of conservative and the question of who is electable. There are some in the GOP who are so outraged by Trump and Cruz that they say they would actually rather have Hillary Clinton in the White House. So, Carly Fiorina, I ask you this. Is your party in crisis?
You know, when I started my campaign on May 4th of last year, I was 17 out of 16 candidates. Nobody polled my name. Nobody had ever heard of me. Less than 4% of you had ever heard of me. And the people in Iowa showed up, and they're still showing up, hundreds and hundreds of them at every event. I've done over 150 events in the state of Iowa. I have 15 more coming up. Now, by the way, I start there because someone asked me about midway through my campaign, what's the biggest surprise to you on the campaign trail? And I'll tell you what the biggest surprise is. The chasm, the yawning chasm between what the national media talks about and what the people of Iowa and the people of this great nation talk about. That's the biggest surprise. So guess what, Martha? Guess what? Sorry, the people of Iowa never asked me about a crisis in the GOP. They never asked me about the polls. They never asked me about the other candidates. What they asked me about is, Carly, tell us why zero-based budgeting is so important. Tell us why you're a leader who's going to produce results. Tell us how you're going to defeat ISIS. Tell us how we're going to replace Obamacare. In other words, I'm going to put my faith every single time, not in the pundits, not in the polls, most definitely not in the national media. I'm going to put my faith in the common sense and the good judgment of the voters of Iowa. And last time I looked, you hadn't started voting yet. So on Monday night, I hope you'll stand with me, fight with me, caucus for me, because citizens, this is why we have to take our government back. The establishment thinks it owns this country. The pundits think they own this country. The media thinks they own this country. We were intended to be a citizen government. Citizens, the game is rigged. You have the power. Take our country back.
Thank you. Governor Gilmore, as of 1 week ago, you had not held a single campaign event here in the state of Iowa. As of 1 week ago, in fact, you were the only one in the Republican field who had not made a campaign visit to the state. You know how it works here. You know how it's worked over time. Why should anyone caucus for you on Monday night?
Well, first of all, Bill, let me say one thing. I have been in Iowa, but this is not the place where I'm choosing to begin my campaign. I am beginning my campaign in New Hampshire, and I decided to do that based upon the process that is in place in Iowa and the primary that's in place in New Hampshire. But never mind that. I want to return to something. I'm the only veteran, Bill and Martha, in this race. And I'm not going to any Donald Trump event over across town on some sort of faux veteran sort of issue. I'm going to speak to you tonight about the issue that really confronts veterans. I'm going to talk to you about the concerns that they've got with the Veterans Administration, the lousy appeals process that they've got, the fact that sometimes they get good service at the VA and sometimes they don't, and the fact that post-traumatic stress syndrome is not properly recognized, that psychology positions are unavailable in the Veterans Administration.
administration. And I will say this to you, as the only veteran in this race, when I become President of the United States, the veterans are going to be treated with respect and competently and success in the Veterans Administration in this country.
Governor, thank you.
Governor Huckabee, word is that New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg is considering getting into this race. If he does, that would make 4 New Yorkers, including Sanders, Clinton, and Trump. One candidate in this race has criticized so-called New York values. So tell me, in your opinion, are New York values different than Iowa values?
You know, I would leave that to other people. I'm not going to get into an argument with all the New Yorkers because there's a lot of them. This much I will tell you. I wish that some of those New Yorkers had funded as much of my campaign as they did the corporately funded candidates, but they didn't. And to be honest with you, when I say I wish they had, I'm glad they didn't. I'm not a New York funded campaign. I'm not bankrolled by the corporatist. I'm not bankrolled by Goldman Sachs and Citibank and AIG and all the big brokerage houses and the billionaires. I'm sponsored by people like Thomas, a part-time Uber driver in Pennsylvania, who sent me $25 this week. He's between jobs. He's driving an Uber car. But he believed in what I'm talking about enough that even on a limited part-time income, he sent me $25 to help in my campaign. I'll stand with the Thomases of the world any day. I'll leave all the discussion of the big financiers to other candidates, but there's only a few of us in the entire Republican process who are not corporately funded by the same group. And let me just finish by saying, you want to know why things never change depending on whether Democrats or Republicans are in power, and why Republicans in Iowa and the rest of the country are so frustrated? The reason is because if you follow the money, the same folks who finance the Democrats finance the Republicans, and no matter what the speeches and the ads, they get the same results. If you want a different result, I'm available.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Santorum, according to Google, the Paris terror attacks were the largest story that was searched in 2015, with nearly 1 billion searches of that story worldwide. There have been at least 18 terror attacks so far this year in just January alone in 2016, and it will likely, as we all know, get worse. But what can an American president do to stop these terrifying killings?
Thank you for the question, Martha. We have to have an honest discussion with the American people about the nature of the threat that we confront. This president says that ISIS has nothing to do with Islam, and as a result has put together a strategy that doesn't take care of what the reality is, which is ISIS has established a caliphate. A caliphate is like a kingdom, ruled by a caliphate is ruled by a caliph, a kingdom is ruled by a king. Only the difference is a caliphate is also a religious title, and it is both a religious call to help this state as well as to make the state stronger. The reality is that ISIS has established a caliphate and is using that to attract people around the globe to follow them as the leaders of the Sunni world. And you say, well, how do we stop them from following them? Well, to be a legitimate caliphate, you have to control land and operate a state under Sharia law. If you don't do that, you cannot call for that support. And so the answer is we must take their land and make them illegitimate in the eyes of the Muslim world. So I would put troops on the ground and take the land back from Iraq and return it to its rightful ownership in Iraq.
Thanks,
that would delegitimize them.
Ms. Fiorina, same topic. The president says that many are exaggerating the threat from ISIS. To quote him, this is not World War III, and they do not pose a threat to our national existence. Does he have a point? Does ISIS threaten our ability to survive as a nation?
Well, let me tell you this. Newsflash, President Obama. Newsflash, Mrs. Clinton. Climate change is not our most pressing national security threat. Actually, it is ISIS, followed closely by Iran, and those two things are linked, so that when our president cozies up to Iran, all of our allies in the Middle East who are ready to help us defeat ISIS wonder whose side we're on. And the truth is, under this president, we are on Iran's side, not our allies who would help us defeat ISIS. You know, one of the things we have to start with is understanding that we must stand up to adversaries. So Hillary Clinton famously asked, what difference does it make how 4 Americans died in Benghazi? This is the difference it makes, Mrs. Clinton. When terrorists purposefully attack an American embassy and kill 4 Americans, including an ambassador, and the next morning you get up and you lie about a videotape that doesn't represent our values, instead of saying the United States of America was purposely attacked by terrorists and we will seek retribution, then you are saying to every adversary and every terrorist organization on the planet, it's open season. That, Mrs. Clinton, is what difference it makes.
Thank you.
Governor Huckabee, you have said when it comes to ISIS, quote, if Russia is willing to help us kill these savages, then on this, they are with us and not against us. But we have seen Putin's quote-unquote help in Crimea and in Ukraine. And this week, the UK implicated him in the poisoning death of one of his rivals. So are you foolish to think that we can ever work with Vladimir Putin?
Oh, I don't trust him. I've never said I trusted him. But if somebody's willing to take a shot at the people we're taking shots at, I'm more than willing to let them use their own bullets to do it. But let's be very clear about how we take out ISIS. And I think Rick Santorum is exactly right. You take away their land. But one of the things we have to do is a comprehensive strategy to get ISIS. First of all, take away their access to social media platforms. They're using the same social media platforms to recruit and to train and to direct people as I use to see pictures of my grandkids. That's ridiculous. The second thing, go after them financially. Wage war with them. Make it so nobody can do commerce with ISIS. Not a nickel of transfer. Any company, any country that even gets close to dealing with them, absolutely put sanctions on them. Make them pay. And finally, you've got to go after them militarily. And that means we send the land, the sea, the air forces, the A-10 Warthogs, dropping ordnances on every truck and every tank, and we obliterate them. But we have to understand that they are a force that's getting bigger, and with any kind of cancer, you don't contain it, you eradicate it. And that's how we have to fight ISIS comprehensively. That's what I would suggest we do.
Thank you.
Governor Gilmore, sometime this spring, 34 more detainees are clear for release from Gitmo. If you were president, as you say, this president wants to close it. As president, if Gitmo were closed and an enemy combatant were found or captured in the field of battle, perhaps Syria or Iraq or Libya, and you don't have Gitmo, where would you put them?
First of all, Bill, I think the Gitmo ought to remain open. But I also want to point out to you that what you're saying is the exact right topic to all these other candidates. And that's this international challenge that we're facing, the international war that America is in, even to this day. And I'm the candidate who is best qualified to deal with this issue. A degree in foreign policy and Russian area studies. I'm the only United States Army veteran having gone to Europe during the Cold War as a United States Army intelligence agent. The governor during the 9/11 attack. The chairman of the National Commission on Homeland Security for the United States for 5 years. And this is what I'll do. If I become the president, I'm going to rebuild the United States military. We're going to take the sequester off the defense budget, give the Navy the ships it needs, refit the United States Army, refit the United States Marine Corps, and on this international guerrilla war. We need to recognize our special forces, our intelligence community, and the people that we need in order to really protect us. And finally, this war of ideas, we must win this. We must say to the world that radical Islamism is the threat. It isn't just confined to ISIS. It is worldwide. And if we win the war of ideas, then we will win the international guerrilla war.
Governor, thank you for that.
Coming up, we're going to have more on the top issues in this campaign, and you can engage in tonight's conversation right from home. Go to Google.com, search Fox News Debate. You can vote on which candidate you think is winning so far in tonight's debate, and you can check results after the debate is over. We are back in a moment live from the Iowa Event Center in Des Moines.